This is part 2 of looking at infographics and how to communicate ideas. So another thing you can consider when you're making an infographic is how you use color. Sometimes color can help you organize ideas, tie two things together. So in this infographic, we are looking at severity of storms, and we have different countries in our map here that we've highlighted in a specific color, that we then tie that color to the types of storms that they've had and the data about them. So this helps us kind of spread our information around on our infographic without having to have it all right next to each other, while still knowing who's connected to who. Color can also be used to communicate more of your kind of ideology or your sort of secret message. So here we have green is associated with yes, positivity. Green is also, just as a color, one that we associate with environmentalism. And so here we have 97% of climate scientists think global warming is significantly due to human activity. Yes! Or you have 3% no, who are in pink. And maybe that pink is going to be seen as warming or whatever. But in some way, we are associating this pink with negativity. So 3% of climate scientists do not think global warming is significantly due to human activity. There's a consensus of scientists because there's a consensus of evidence. So obviously, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to cross that out. There is a consensus of evidence. But this infographic is communicating this idea to us, that these people are wrong, right? And so that's very obvious on their color choice and by their wording. So it's not like they're doing necessarily something sneaky, but they're using the tools of the infographic to communicate that idea. Here is one that I love because it's colorful. I love colors. And it also has interesting organization. So this is very difficult to read because there's a lot of small text and there's a lot of shapes, but overall you can see the kind of key to the figure is here, right? So we're looking at CO2 emissions by different countries. We have these large bubbles. The bubble size is associated with the number, right? So the larger the bubble, the larger the impact. So we're seeing where those impacts are coming from and kind of their proportion relative to their actual global proportion. So you can see Africa, though huge on the map, is relatively low contribution to global climate change. Same thing for South America. These two very large continents are having a relatively small impact when you consider the US in North America and China in Asia. So how do these different regions contribute differently based on size, and organizing that information by color so that you can use this as a tool. So here we see that juxtaposition. We have the beautiful green and blue earth that we know that could be converted into this fiery desert earth, right? These are the two ideas that we're looking at. So here are our pieces of data that go along to communicate this idea, but we have, and this is pretty funny too, because this is just an infographic about climate change, but it doesn't have any real text in it. Just maybe an example of how you can make an infographic. I have this infographic in here because I love the way it's arranged, because it has to do with your project, right? How you're going to arrange your project. You're going to tell us the issue, you're going to tell us the importance, and then you're going to present solutions. So those are the three components of your infographic. But what I love about this is that 2/3 of this whole infographic is devoted to solutions. So that has a positivity to it, a productivity to it that can hopefully inspire people. I love this. Here we have, again, a use of color where we are looking at the choices we face and kind of what we can expect from those choices. So if we do aggressive mitigation, here we are in the nice cool side. If we do business as usual, here the colors have gotten warmer. and you can see kind of pictures of what's happening. We have maybe pollution and trucks carting stuff around that they've mined out of the earth, fossil fuels maybe. Here we have solar panels and people on bikes and being outside with green trees, right? So we have this imagery. We also have extensive ice sheets and creatures living in the ocean. Here we have no ice and no creatures, right? So we're looking at these two ideas that are related to each other, kind of two parts of a story. The first part is our decision. What are we going to do? And then we're assuming that we make the good decision, right? The green one. So we go to our pathway to 2 degrees and then see what we've done, right? And where we are. So this has started this cascade, and now we're running out of time to change that cascade, right? So what is our pathway to get to this solution? Now we'll talk about infographic fails. This infographic was published in a Business Insider article trying to communicate the dramatic rise of gun deaths in Florida after the enactment of the Stand Your Ground law. If we look at the infographic, though, we can see the red color probably indicating blood, right? I don't know if they're trying to do like blood running down. But the first thing that it looks like is that, so number of murders committed using firearms is our title here. And we see our point where Florida enacted the Stand Your Ground law. But then we see this decrease, or at least that's what it looks like from the way that this is arranged. But the numbers start at 0 and then go up as they go down. So completely counterintuitive. And it makes it look like after that law was enacted that we had a huge decrease in the number of deaths. So let's look at it the other way. If we chose to communicate it this way, we'd see that the number of murders, using firearms at least, had gone down in the 1990s, and then had kind of rebounded a little bit, but then here shoots up dramatically, right? And that's the information that this article is trying to communicate. But for whatever reason, they published an infographic that made it look exactly the opposite. So that's a huge fail. Here's another fail because the graphics are meaningless. How does this convey a baby boomer? I don't know. Do these percentages add up to anything? No. We just have percentages contributing to relative parts of a figure. That doesn't mean anything. But also, they don't add up to 100%, so why have them be part of a figure, right? So if you have percentages adding up to a whole, that whole should be 100%. The other thing that's an interesting decision is that where these are located doesn't really matter either. I don't know why creativity's in your feet, and I don't know why they put tech savvy, this 22%, in this narrow band around the crotch. Because if they had put a larger band there, then it would extend to a larger area that wasn't just the crotch, but because they chose the smallest band, for whatever reason, it's focused on the genitals, which is a weird decision. Here we have another example of percentages of a pie or of a figure that don't add up to 100%. So I don't know how you have 70%, 60%, and 63% adding up to 100%, but such is the news. Okay, so those are some examples of fails, things that you don't want to do. The other example would be too chaotic, right? Too hard to follow around, or having really small font. This is a list of some free infographic builders. I just went to this site and tried to make one, and it wanted me to give all this information about myself that I wasn't comfortable with. So I am not going to use that one, but you can check it out. Another important point, and I'll talk about this when I do the kind of walkthrough of how to use a site, is that some sites say that it's free to make one, but then at the end when you try to download what you've made, they say that you need to pay for it or that you need a paid membership. So if that happens to you, just take a screenshot or send me a link to your infographic and maybe your login information so that I can get to it. It's possible that you might just be able to send me the link without your login information and I can get to it. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but don't pay for anything. Okay, so as you're making your infographics, you might have data that you want to include, and maybe you can't find a graph online that shows that data, and the data is all numerical. So what you can do is you can go into Google Sheets and make charts, and you had some practice with this on the Butterfly Phenology Lab. It does require that you have a Gmail account, but I believe that your student accounts with CR allow you to do that. So if you go into Google Sheets, you can go into a new Google Sheet, and that would be the green one here. So you click on this and you do New Sheet. And then you can add in some data that you want to use. So you might have a table that just has the data in it that you can't copy the data out of. So you might have to enter it in manually, but a lot of things will have like an Excel file that you could download and then put into Google Sheets. With a short table like this, it was pretty easy for me to just manually copy that information down. So then I have the data in my Google Sheet, and then I'm going to select the data I want to use, and I can just select the top of each of these columns here, just click on it and it'll select the whole column underneath it, or I can click and drag and select it all. So then I go up to Insert and go to Chart here. And then it's going to let me customize my chart. So the first thing that's going to do, it'll put up a chart that seems like the one that I think that it wants. And so here it thought a column chart would probably be the best choice, but I could change that by going here. I can also change the colors by going to Customize. I can change kind of the labels for my axes or how it's kind of spaced apart, right, the range. I can change my title. All of that I can do in the chart editor, either under Data or under Customize. You'll also see in the infographic site that I used, Canva, when you go into charts, you can make charts within Canva. So it'll have these sort of generic charts that you click on, and then you put them into your infographic, and they have points that you can put in your own information, and it makes these nice little graphs for you. So the other one that you can use is called Easily. I would recommend going to Easily if you want to use a customized template and just edit it, because they have a lot of templates that relate to environmental science or maybe seem like they do. Whereas on Canva, it's more business oriented. So in Canva, I would start template free and just make your own. So you register by just putting in your email. It's free to use. And you can, invent a fake email for this if you want to. I don't care. Just find a way to make an infographic, whether it be using one of these template sites or just draw it on your own. Take a picture of it and send that picture to me. You don't have to sign up for any of these sites. It just makes it easier. So the first thing you're going to do is select a template. And then once you do select a template, you can customize it by clicking on the different icons, moving them around, delete them, add new ones. Very important point for using Easily is that you have to double click on any of these boxes to change the text. So I kept clicking on things and nothing would happen. You have to double click pretty quick in a row to be able to edit the information. So they have a lot of fun options for different types of infographics you can use. Don't forget to save when you're done. You might be making this all in one go, or you might be making it slowly over time. Just make sure you're saving along the way. What else? Oh yeah, and if there's any elements of the infographic that don't work for you, this is the tricky part about using one of these pre-constructed templates, is often, you're really restricted to some box size that they've made for you, but maybe you have more text to go in that than fits. So you can delete those elements and put in new elements. Feel free to make modifications so that the template fits what you're doing. Don't just try to squeeze your information into these boxes, because it'll look bad and it will be a poor way to communicate your specific information. So this is a link to, I think, the infographic that I made, an infographic about infographics, and this sort of timeline of how I would consider doing it.